and welcome to another episode of the Heal Your Worldview podcast. I'm your host, James Knight, and as always, this podcast is dedicated to helping people connect their philosophical worldview with the childhood trauma they experienced growing up, and how that trauma affects how they see the world around them, and why it's important to know that effect is causing you problems in your life. And this episode, I want to talk about a thing that I'm getting better at, but because of my own trauma, I am not good at seeing people when they switch. Now, switching is a strange term, but if you remember the movies and all the stuff that talk about the split personality, it's kind of like that, but not really. I know that the psychological community, or I should say the mental health community, has, walked that all back and really kind of put that to bed, that that's not how it works, that you're still connected to when it happens. You have an understanding when it's happening, but the trick is that the dark side comes out and takes action in a toxic way. Now, the switch happens when you get stressed out in the right way. So just to rehash, when you're a child and you're growing up, you are just learning how to do everything. You're learning how to use your body. You're learning how to communicate. You're learning how to think. You're learning how to evaluate objects in the world. Like, this is all happening while the world is trying to kill you. Okay? Like, just think about it, right? This is not a cynical thing. This is not a pessimistic thing, but the world is trying to kill you every day. Gravity alone can kill you in 100 different ways that I can think of off the top of my head, just by making you trip and fall down the stairs. There's all kinds of nasty things that gravity represents around you. It also has some good stuff, but, we're just laying this down, just like, hey, this life is hard enough. When you're around a little kid, especially that moment when they start crawling, the moment they're mobile, you have to assess the room, man. There's so much danger for a little kid. There's a term for it. It's called houseproofing for your child, right? Or kid-proofing, whatever you want to call it. But it's a legitimate thing. You have to think like a little kid. Like, okay, will they be able to reach that shiny object? Will they be able to fall down the stairs? Will they be able to climb up onto that whatever piece of furniture you have in there and fall off and possibly kill themselves? There's this awareness that comes when you're around a child. And, I'm a grandpa now, and my son and his wife were telling me how Aiden is now starting to kind of flip himself over. So now they have to watch out, because if he's anywhere near the edge of the bed or the couch or whatever, and he gets the wherewithal to try to flip himself over, he could flip right off the couch and land on the floor. So now that's their first rung of the baby proofing cycle. And it just keeps escalating, because, they get smarter and smarter and more capable and more capable. And if you ever try to keep a dog out of anything like trash or whatever, it's hard enough to keep a dog out. And then now you have a little human that their intelligence is rapidly developing right in front of your eyes. It's fun and it's a little scary, just because you don't want them to get hurt and all that kind of stuff. But it's an interesting thing. It like changes your perspective when you're around a person that is growing up. Okay. So anyway, the development phase. Okay. So the child has needs, okay? And then the development it's rapid. I don't know the scientific data points behind the development of a child, but it's fast. You really see the speed of it when we're in infancy and that part. So it's really dramatic from like 0 to, let's say, 5, 6 years old. It starts to slow down a little bit. You see the kids growing year by year, but you stop noticing the dramaticness of it after about 4, or maybe it's 5. Yeah, anyway. So the development, so the child develops, the child has needs. They can only communicate with you with emotional language, which is funny why people are so uncomfortable around emotions. When someone else is hurt, like say your friend lost their job or something and they're crying, and you get this uncomfortable feeling. And it's interesting how that works. I've tried to ponder it many times, but like when a baby is upset, you have this, when you're a parent, you just automatically sync with the baby. You just know most likely what they need. It's really cool, actually. It's almost like a psychic connection. You can see them start to get a little fussy, and then you're thinking about, what time is it? Is it hungry? Did they go potty? Like what? So anyway, so we as parents we know how to process these emotions. This is an alarm and it needs an action item in order to turn the alarm off. Okay. So when you have kids, it's like if you have your head on right and and you learn that, you really learn about a lot of things about other people in general. Okay. You learn about them just looking at the emotions and understanding the emotions, looking at the expression on this face. It's all there. And the baby is in the perfect state. If you ever want to learn, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because I still have deficits in when people switch. Okay. And usually when they switch, there's definitely an emotion. There's the expression on the face changes, the way the language is being used changes. That's one of the reasons why I am drawn towards arguments and logical fallacies and rhetoric and all the pieces and how if someone's going to try to manipulate me, what would the technique look like so that I can't be manipulated? It's basically in that state where I'm traveling, trying to get better and better at it. And I'm pretty good at it now. It's I would say your chances of manipulating me with language tricks are about zero. Although I am susceptible, I just found out I'm susceptible to when someone presents themselves as sweet and innocent and make sure that they let you know just how careful they are and they would rather die than hurt your feelings, that kind of stuff, all the while they're ready to hurt your feelings. So that just happened to me recently with another client I was talking to. She presented this really like, oh, there's no way that this person could hurt a fly, and not so much. So I'm still like, oh yeah, you still have stuff to work out. Now, I didn't go for it hook, line, and sinker, but I did drop my guard. And you should never drop your guard when you're talking to a new person. Just, you shouldn't do it. It's not good for you. We don't want to reach some kind of paranoid level either, because you don't want to dilute yourself that you're in danger. So how I handle meeting new people is I give them the benefit of the doubt until I see the type of behavior or language tricks that alert me that what they say at face level is not the case. Because whatever you do, you don't want to get cynical in this life, okay? To be a cynic it's a dark place. It's a negative place. It steals your joy. Because how can you have joy when everything is crap? Okay, it's the nihilist part. It's all these defense mechanisms that you learn because of your trauma, because, whatever happened to you when you were a kid, which is like, what I'm also talking about in this episode, is you don't want that to affect the rest of your life. Okay, it's going to be a difficult road to hoe from this point forward if you have that negative worldview. And that is none of this matters. Morality doesn't matter. Reality doesn't matter. It's such a terrible place to be. You can't even, like, if someone actually loves you, you wouldn't even be able to enjoy it because you have this cynical element inside of you. Do cynics like dogs? I don't know. It's a good question. It's hard to not like a dog because they're pretty honest. Anyway, so we have the development. We have the disruption of the development that brings the complex trauma online. You have the needs of the child as they're growing up. They're learning, they're, expanding into life. So the reason I brought that up again is because if you are like me and you're still not quite consistent on when someone switches on you, let's say you're having a debate about something, I don't know, politics, whatever, pick something, and you cross into a line where you activate the other person's cognitive dissonance. Now, the cognitive dissonance is one of those things that will generally activate a protector. You're going to get the coping mechanism is going to come online and fight you because cognitive dissonance feels real bad. It's a very, very nasty thing to experience. And cognitive dissonance is like, let's say you were a little kid and your father's yelling at you, whatever, and then your mom says, well, your father loves you, but your father is generally verbally abusive to you all the time. Well, you see that, right? Now you're going to equate love with this verbal abuse, and that triggers cognitive dissonance when you see what love is supposed to be based on what you saw someone else doing. And you're like, holy crap, that's what it's supposed to look like. And then you're like, oh my God, I've never been loved. That's where the cognitive dissonance will kick in. That's when your protectors will come online to shield you from that pain. Because that's a brutal realization, to realize that the type of love you got was toxic. And we have this funny thing we do with English. So we have this umbrella term called love, and then we can put all these qualifiers on it: parental love, romantic love, all those things. But the definition of the word love is what we think of first. So when I say toxic love, that's an oxymoron, and it's confusing because the word love is being used. So that's where you have this. English does cause a problem with that specific thing, where like the Greeks had different words for it. It was not toxic love. It was, the word for familiar love and the word for friendship love. And they had it was a different word. And when you use that word, you didn't use a qualifying word like love with it. So we have to be aware of that with English language, that it can cause us to get stuck with someone telling you what love is, and it's not that. And you have to have somebody later in your life explain like, well, that's not exactly what love is supposed to look like. That's more like a toxic love. But then you shouldn't even use the word love. When I try to be articulate and make sure that the ideas go across, if it's not love, don't use the word love, right? Don't say toxic love. Say, oh, well, my father had a certain scar tissue and he mistook love for this type of behavior, and it was very confusing, and it really, really damaged me throughout my life. See how it's a little different? So when you see a person switch, this is the kind of thing too, like when we talk about complex trauma, when we're faced with that terrible moment where we have to shut off our authentic self and bring a coping mechanism online that is going to be toxic. Anytime you shut your authentic self off to deal with an issue, whatever technique you're using to deal with the issue is going to be toxic by nature because you're not your authentic self. See, I'm trying to get better at noticing when someone switches and their toxic coping mechanism comes online, because if I get sucked in, I can also become a little toxic. I was helping this client, and she's in a full rage, right? I mentioned this in another podcast, but she's in a full rage and she's just making stuff up. Her now ex-husband is evil personified on the face of the planet. He is a malignant narcissist, and no matter what anyone says, if they disagree with her, they're on his side and they're under his spell. That's how far gone she is. And I had to sever ties with her because, what happened to me is I was exposed to this energy for too long. And here's another thing, too, that I think that's very important for anybody listening. If you're trying to do rational arguments with someone that's in a state of irrationality, you're making a huge mistake. And that's a mistake I made in this interaction. And that interaction got real ugly. Because I talk about this in the other podcasts as well, but it bears repeating here because it's the same inspiration for making this one, is that how do you deal with someone that is lying to themselves in real time, watching them spin up their rage, their anger, right? They start in this place of first it's hurt, then it's annoyed or feeling, all these different emotions, like they light up and they kind of stack, but you're feeling like you've been wronged. You're feeling like that piece of like, I want justice. That all comes online. And if you feed it with falsities, you can make that into a nuclear bomb, if you would, a metaphorical nuclear bomb. I like the term, this part of you, this when you split and this part of you lights up, that's you nuking the site from orbit. And that's what I did. Okay, I nuked the site from orbit with this client, and probably not going to talk to them ever again, but that's okay because things were getting bad. And when you're in the space where you're doing some life coaching or you're actually a therapist and you're exposed to this energy, it is dangerous energy. Like make no mistake about it. If you run into somebody that is in a toxic state of mind because they've been going through all kinds of relationship trauma or whatever, yeah, it's going to affect you. And so this is kind of like a journal of sorts as well, where I'm like, how am I going to handle this going forward? And I obviously need to get better at catching the switch. Now, if you play poker, there's tells, right? People have tells because they don't think about it. And you can see when someone, their mannerisms change and you can tell they got a good hand because they're betting aggressively, or they might be bluffing. But, you start to, if you play with the same people over and over again, you start to figure out what you're looking at for the most part. Now, if they're smart, they can like use that against you and all that, but we're not talking about that. We're just talking about that's a great way to practice to catch someone in the act of deception, because in poker, deception is part of the point. Now, you play fairly, but you try to deceive the players that are with you into thinking you have something that you don't, or you don't have something that you do. And I think that's a great way to practice learning these techniques so that you know when they're being used on you. Because you never want to do these things to other people. You never want to make another person do something they don't want to do. Even if it's in their own best interest, you don't want to ever manipulate somebody into their own best interest. That's not going to go well. They're going to figure it out, and then you're just made it worse. Like whatever happens in your dynamic in your relationship after that point, it's going to be in big trouble, because that's a betrayal. And this is a good one for you ladies out there that have the snark voice. When you get a little pissy and you have that snark voice and you start saying cutting things because you are agitated or annoyed or whatever. So instead of saying, oh, I'm feeling a little annoyed here, I better be careful not to shoot my mouth off. And that becomes a weird habit that, I mean, not just women, but that's typically something that from the feminine side of the equation is the snark voice. But I know plenty of men do it too. But it's these little things, right? Don't do it. Don't go there. It's not good for you, right? It's definitely not good for the person you did it to, but it's really not good for you either, because now you have to deal with, you have harmed this person. So the switching, what I do now is, because I've practiced and raised my skill level at spotting logical fallacies and rhetorical tricks that are used to deceive, I'm pretty good at it now. And unless you're a professional college professor that knows all these things front to back, I'm going to catch most of what is going on. So it's hard to sneak one past me. And if you do sneak one past me, 24 hours later, I'll be like, oh, wait, let me look up and see if that was something that I thought it was. But that's 24 hours later. That's not good enough in real time, because instead of nuking the site from orbit, like I did, because I was really angry at all of the lies that were flying around, and so I just hit the nuke button. I should have disengaged. I should have, caught the switch, realized that I'm wasting my time with these arguments, and taken it from there. Okay, that would have been a much better way for me to deal with it. And so, I'm just doing some reflection here, and I thought maybe you guys might find it useful of how I look at it, how I approach it, some of the things that have helped me progress in, reading people. It's hard to read people if you are conditioned not to read people, okay? And that's what happens to us as little kids. I think an authentic child born into a family that has a lot of complex trauma, it really screws up the heads of those with the trauma, because there's like this subconscious thing like, oh, I used to be authentic, okay? And there's that explains some of the abuse that happens in families towards children. It's unbearable to see an authentic human, so let's make sure we break that real fast so that they're just like us. Something like that. I don't know. Let me know what you think about that one, because I think that one sounds plausible, because I really, really shy away from the labeling people as evil. Now, they do evil actions, but most people are driven by the idea that they're the good guy. So if you think you're the good guy, but you're doing bad things, then someone's got to challenge you and say, by the way, that's bad, which is the point of learning the laws of power, because the laws of power teach you how to discover when someone's words don't match their deeds. And then you have to scrutinize what they're doing, because obviously they're in deception land. And deception land is tricky because it could be subconscious, right? Someone could lie to your face and you call them on it and they say, but I didn't lie. Seriously, they don't remember lying, because in that state of mind they were in, it wasn't a lie. Not to them. That was their perceived reality. What do you do in that situation? It's difficult. So, but the best thing you could do is what I'm trying to teach in this series is how to check yourself, how to audit your own worldview and make sure that your complex trauma is not steering you into the ditch of life. I mean, life's hard enough. You don't want to keep crashing into the ditch because you are seeing things in a distorted light. It's like you're trying to go down the stairs and the lights are off and you're wearing slippery socks and you have all the pieces on there that are going to make sure that if you have one small trip, you're going down the stairs. Anyway, practicing catching the switch. Do not try to reason with someone that's obviously in an emotional state, whatever that state happens to be. It's a difficult thing. I don't know how I could have handled it any better either, because this is a persistent thing where the false narrative that has been created by the wife just won't stop. Like normally people, sure, let them rage for whatever amount of days, but this has been going on for weeks. And she's found the ability to keep her own fire going. Because usually when you feel angry, it just kind of wears off after a while. And then then you're stuck with, oh, what have I done? And that's an important thing to do is when you get angry, make sure you don't do anything that you have to go back and say, oh, what have I done? Okay, that's hard to do, but it is possible. That just comes with keep doing the work and you get better and better at managing your own emotions when they're winding up and trying to break free and get out of control. So seeing the switch. Usually what I notice is the person starts to talk differently. So for example, some people will start to speak in hyperbolic emotional terms, okay? You always do this. You always did that. How come we never do this? And then catches the other one off guard and they're like, wait a minute, we do stuff like that all the time. We're fine. And then it gets you defensive. And then I start to argue. That's how I get sucked in to an episode, right? But seeing the switch, you have to kind of be more present to catch it. And when you get into the stress, of course, your protectors are trying to come online and protect you. They're trying to take over for you so that, because obviously you don't know how to do it. When you were a kid, you didn't know how to do it. So the protector comes online because you need someone to protect you. So that's the chain that goes down. And it's a really simple thing to see, but it's also really hard to catch it. It's like the grease pig competition when you're a little kid at the 4-H club and they grease up the pig and they throw him out there and whichever kid grabs him gets some kind of prize. But the pig is little, it's fast. You have to wait for it to get tired or whatever, but it's not easy, okay? It's not easy to find the grease pig and it's not easy for you to catch the switch because it might be, the switch is designed to protect them as well as to screw you up. And if you don't catch it fast enough, you only get a couple minutes. It's not like you have time because it happens fast. So all the dominoes go down and then you find yourself defending yourself or any kind of stuff like that. And that's the moment you have to disconnect there because you missed the switch because now you're emotional. It's pretty difficult. I feel for everybody that's in the situation where they're trying to figure this stuff out. I feel for you. It's not easy, but it is doable. And it's worth it because your life gets better. Anyway, if you would, let me know in the comments, how do you spot the switch if you're good at it? That'd be interesting to know because there's got to be techniques that you can, fold into your process on how you do things that would help you more easily catch it when it happens. I hope you found this podcast enjoyable. And if you did, if you could like or possibly subscribe, that'd be great. Help me get my message out there. And as always, I'll see you on the next one and have a great day.